Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Sports and Songs podcast. We'll be reminiscing on a purchase of an album in the early 70s as part of a bonus episode today. We're being joined with special guest Pat from Edina. Pat, how are you?
I'm doing well, Dan. Thanks for having me on today.
Good, good. And so part of we do sports, we do the typical sports show once a week. We do the song show once a week, and then we fill
hmm
in these bonus episodes. And typically our songs episodes that people listen to um, are reviews of albums, concerts, upcoming tours, experiences of going to shows, and deep dives into various musicians and their backgrounds. But today, we've never done this before, Pat. First time is actually the experience of buying an album, a vinyl piece, a square vinyl box at the store, and what it was like in the early 70s. Now, I'm a generation back, and so
Yeah,
everything was all cassettes, and then later everything
right.
into CDs. Now it's all MP3s, and I get a sense, Pat, that there's no connection to going online and buying an MP3 song and downloading it. There's no connection to making that purchase. Going to the store and buying the vinyl was an experience. I mean, that was an actual experience that took place when people like yourself went and bought an album. And we're going to
Yeah,
talk about
for
today
right.
what it was like buying your very first. What was that very first experience like? So tell us a little more about that, and then we'll get into this into this album here.
Yeah, well, I think you're right, Dan, with the experience. I mean, I call it back in the day, and this is the early 70s. It was an experience because you were going in and you were physically picking up that album, looking at the cover, touching the vinyl. Yeah, and there was just a lot to it. And then taking it home and unpacking it and putting it on the stereo and playing it. So this purchase took place, it was probably early 1973. So I would have been 15 years old, roughly 15 or so.
Perfect age,
And
yes.
yeah, exactly. And Deep Purple, Made in Japan, is the album. And it's probably to this day one of my favorite pieces of vinyl or music ever recorded. Just love it. Uh, and the reason that I was looking for it is I had heard their Smoke on the Water song from one of their previous albums. And this really caught my attention. I had started to hear some different clips coming out from Made in Japan live, going to a record store here and there with my brother or friends. And they might have had this on playing it, but I had never really looked to purchase it. And as time went on, course of 1973, early on, I said, you know what, I think I have to have this. And this was actually my first double album that I had ever purchased. I had never delved into that, or first album for that matter. I'd purchased singles and whatnot. So for me, this is kind of a huge purchase, and it was a 2-record set, so it certainly wasn't cheap at that time. I don't even know what the price was, but I remember my dad driving me down to Delmonico's House of Stereo, which
Nice.
I believe was on Lake Street, if I'm not mistaken.
So
Um,
Minneapolis, South Minneapolis, essentially there. And what was it called? Delmonico's.
Delmonico's House of Stereo. Yeah, and I knew I wanted this album, so there wasn't any dilly dallying around or looking for this or that. I went in, found it, and purchased it, and brought it. And it was just a great experience. And I think from this album, what it's done for me, probably 95% of my music collection, and I don't have a huge collection. I'm pretty specific about what I listen to. About 95% is all live music. And I think it's because of this album itself. I always felt like listening to this album, I mean, these guys were live. Uh, there's no dancing, there's no show, there's no nothing. This is just pure music. And it was a fantastic album. And that's really what turned me on to live music. And I always felt that, hey, if you can't do it live, um, I don't think you're that good then. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, nowadays we hear backing tracks being used in live performances. The whole concept of going to a live show has also been diluted because there's so many things going on. There's so many other music and tracks being pumped into the system. You're not hearing just the band, performing their art.
Correct.
Like that, this is
Right.
some raw stuff. And Deep Purple were, they were not fans of the live. They were not fans at first of doing this live show. Their stuff was, studio music.
Hmm.
And this album, this and the previous concert, the tours, there was a lot of bootlegs floating around. People
Yes.
were recording Deep Purple in concert, and there was a big market for that on the underground. And the recording company said, "Let's make a live album." They said, we're not too much into that. It's a lot of extra thinking to do that and putting all that together to make it sound right. And the record label said, "Well, we'll handle all that. You guys just go perform. We got another studio album coming up that we're going to be releasing anyway. But let's record a couple of these. Let's go do it in Japan. There's 3 shows, and we'll record 7, basically just 7 songs of the best songs that they picked of each of those songs and put it together into a double live album." And the band essentially, once again, says, "That's fine. Go ahead and do it. Do what you need to do."
Right.
And we got to focus on the show. And why the album, I think, came out so good, I read somewhere, is that they weren't trying to play for the live show. They weren't trying to promote the live. They were because they didn't care about the live set.
Just playing.
It's all authentic. That's why it came out
Yep.
so good. And that's why people liked it.
Yeah. And I think what's unique about it, imagine now in this day and age, sitting down and listening to a song that's 20 minutes in length.
Yes.
The average length of these songs is probably about 10 minutes, and you've got a couple on there that are 20 minutes in length.
Yeah, and just to reiterate this, when this came out, this is a 2-album vinyl set. But the original consisted of only 7 songs. This isn't 20 songs,
No.
5 on each side, which is very common. This was some of these sides. The last song, side 4, Space Truckin', is the only song on side 4, and it's 19 minutes and 42 seconds long.
Right.
And so what Pat means here for the listeners, what Pat means is that these songs aren't that long, but you have the long intro, a long outro, a long solo in between of some sort, and it really extends these songs out. Some aren't fans of these really long, drawn-out songs. Some are, but it makes it special because it's like you were there. I mean, it's like listening to this is unbelievable. It's not long, but these songs are very long, but it goes by very quick. The album length is 78 minutes.
Right.
And then later they did some remastering and some box sets. And what's the length on some of those?
So they added 3 more songs in there to their remastered vinyl. And that brings it up to about 98 minutes. So you've got about 10 minutes.
So an hour and a half.
Yeah.
This is an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Pat, if you went to the show, how many songs did they play in the actual show? Typically 15, 16, 20 songs.
Yeah, I think when you go to the concert,
maybe.
Exactly. And unfortunately, I never had a chance to see these guys live. But having the album in Japan, being there live, and I think the other thing that attracted me to this, and one song specific, Lazy, on this set, is just brief background. My grandfather was a jazz musician.
Okay.
And so there are tones of jazz and blues in what these guys are playing. And because they're just kind of freewheeling it on this album, really pick up that sense of, mixture of jazz and blues in this.
Yeah, the band was well known for their strong stage act. And had privately recorded several shows to broadcast them on the radio. But the band, it says here, just from reading from Wikipedia, they were very unenthusiastic about recording a live album until the company decided it would be good for publicity. So very interesting. Now the members of the band, and we're all going to know these guys. Richie Blackmore on guitar.
Right.
And remember, this is 1972. This is all recorded in August of 72. Ian Gillian, vocals. Roger Glover on bass. Ian Pace, drums. And John Lord, organ piano. That's the difference for Deep Purple. A lot of organ. John Lord later went on to become very active in the Whitesnake, early Whitesnake music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can hear that again. I refer back to Lazy. You can hear the organ in that particular tune. I think the other thing that attracted me to the band too was Ian Pace, their drummer. I just liked the way he sounded and his style of play and so on.
So they go to Japan. They record the shows in Osaka and Tokyo. 3 dates. They were originally, I think, supposed to play those dates 2 months earlier, and then
Correct.
another concert, a U.S. band, I think, came in and had overlapping dates, so they pushed this out
Yep.
and did it. But this was Rolling Stone's Reader poll in 2012 ranked Made in Japan the sixth best live album of all time. Now that's actually pretty low. Everything else I've read, this album is a top five in anyone's collection. What's your thoughts?
Absolutely. I've talked to different people who know a lot more about music than I do, and they rank this right up there, if not their top choice of music. So I think from all time, yes, it has to be considered at least in the top five. I would probably, again, just personal opinion, put this as number one or two.
Yes, yes. Now, did you like the band earlier, prior to this, or was it the "Smoke on the Water" song and your friends listening to this that got you into this particular album?
Yeah, that was really it. Just listening, I first heard "Smoke on the Water," which was a big thing. And as kids, we had a piano at home, and we would try and
Of course.
play the opening of "Smoke on the Water" with that, or some other instrument or whatever. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
before that, when they first started out, I'm reading here, it's, the earlier versions of the band were kind of, they did a lot of pop and psychedelic rock. But then
mhm.
when they got this group together, the members here, they got into just regular hard rock, and this
Yeah.
really was good. This was pretty wild at the time. This was pretty heavy, was it not? Back in
Oh, for
'72,
sure.
this was
Absolutely.
heavy music.
Yeah. Yeah. I think now, you would probably consider this borderline heavy metal.
Okay,
But yeah,
okay.
it was, the time that you were looking at Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, bands of that nature, that
Black Sabbath.
Black Sabbath, all kind of in that genre of music that were coming in. And, I think too, you look at Led Zeppelin, I mean, you got a lot of jazz and blues based with that as well.
Now, when they got there in August to record, they said they couldn't believe to do the show live in concert and have 12 or 13,000 Japanese kids singing along to "Child in Time."
Hmm.
Exactly. I mean, the fans, Japan's always been known for a very, very big fan of music. I mean, when
Yes.
Kiss went there in '78 and sold out three straight shows there, it just blows the doors off
Yeah.
what the fans are like there in Japan. Yeah, it was he considers it. Ian Gillian considers it a career highlight, doing that song and having everyone sing exactly the words. It's just unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It would have to be.
Now the tracks. Let's get to the tracks here,
Yep.
Pat. Highway Star, of course, good song.
Good
Um,
song.
and
Hmm.
yeah, let's go through some of your thoughts on this on each one. That's a personal one of my favorites. Very good.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at my list here too, and what I've got.
And
Highway
then
Star, I like it. Probably not my all time favorite on that album. Child in Time, I really like. I like how it starts out, um, and then it just kind of morphs from there. Smoke on the Water, enough said about that. That's just kind of a classic song that's been around for so long. Like everybody's probably heard Smoke on the Water.
correct.
Um, the Mule, I don't listen to that a whole lot. Again, not a super fan of that particular song. Strange Kind of Woman, love it, love that song. Just love how it starts out. You got Ian Gillian on vocals with that, and then it just really kicks in from there. Probably my all-time favorites, just from this particular album, but all-time favorite song of any song that I have is probably Lazy.
Really?
Yeah, I love how it starts out. You've got Lillian again on vocals, that just kicks in, and then it just all kind of goes from there. It starts out just with the instrumental and moves from there. Just love that song. And then you've got Ace Truckin', which I like too. I mean, that just kind of combines everything.
Oh, that's awesome. That's one of my favorites as well. Now, did you know that in January 2006, progressive metal band Dream Theater played the entire original album in its entirety in
I
Tokyo?
heard that. I heard that. Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Now I have not heard them play any tunes from this, so I can't comment whether I particularly like it or don't like it. But it would be something that would be worth listening to. And when we used to listen to this album, and I think that's probably what was unique back in that day, is we would literally listen to the album. We would put it on the turntable, put the needle down on the vinyl, and I had my stereo in my bedroom, and we would turn it up, and we would listen to an hour of music.
Yes, you weren't skipping through and moving the needle to the different songs
No,
you like. You just put it on once and let it play out. And that's what
let
it
it.
was. I think that was very common.
Yes, yes, you would just literally let it play out. There was no moving forward.
Now, what was the budget on this album for the band?
From what I gather, it was about $3,000 to make this, to produce this. Which, think about that, $3,000 to produce this album, and what would that cost be today if you were to do something like that? Probably astronomical.
Yes, yes. And John Lord said in one of the quotes that the double album wasn't meant to be released outside of Japan. They wound up putting it out anyway, and it went platinum in about 2 weeks. So this was meant to be recorded, but it was meant to be given, sold in Japan and sold in other areas of the world. But it had no one; they weren't interested in selling it in the U.S. But once they did, it went platinum in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
Lord,
I think it surprised everybody, how successful this album was, and just how everybody gravitated towards it.
John Lord lists this as his favorite Deep Purple album because the band was at the height of its powers. This was the epitome of what we stood for in those days. Probably the best live rock and roll album ever made, declared Ian Pace. It's just phenomenal. And then, because it's so good, and it happened to be your very first purchase,
Mhm.
like it sounds like very meaningful, very impactful on your life by getting this and coming from a musical family. Besides the fact, this is very impactful. And how about other kids, neighbors, cousins, that age? Was this their favorite also, or could they could take it or leave it, and you just personally liked it?
I really personally love this. Some of my friends could take it or leave it. My brother, who is a music aficionado, really loved this album. And in fact, at one time, just kind of a side note, he had every Beatles album ever produced, including the bootlegs. So he really,
Really?
yeah, he really got into music and kind of knew his stuff, and he did like this album. This is one of his favorites as well.
Now, when you opened it up, what was the sleeve? The album, was there liner notes? What did the sleeve look like itself?
Yeah, boy. So yes, there were liner notes, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe there was a personal note from every band member on the album sleeve. And
Okay.
I couldn't tell you what those words said. But yeah, and I think what initially attracted me, I mean, if you just look at the cover of the album, I love it because it's it's simple, it's plain, and to me it gets right to the point. It's a
Yes.
live album.
We Andy and I talk a lot of album covers back in the day and how
Hmm.
important they are, and sometimes you get too fancy with them and it overshadows. This is clean. This is a clean look. We've got it up here on the screen now. for the listeners, it's a clean, simple album cover. Nothing fancy. It's a simple
Right.
still shot. That's it.
Right.
Bingo.
That's it. And you had numerous album covers back in that time period, that were literally works of art. And you had the other side of the spectrum where it was like this, where it was just very simple, straight to the point.
Yeah, it's good stuff. They say here it even puts anything that Led Zeppelin as Black Sabbath or Bad Company, anything. It's better than any of those this live performance, and that's saying a lot. Yeah, a lot of good memorabilia with this stuff as well over the years with Deep Purple. Now, you've never seen them live, correct?
I've never seen them live. No. I've seen a few groups live, but this is one that I have not and will not.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And here, the last thing I want to mention here is, once again, because the band members were not really interested in doing this because they were uninterested. They were concentrating on simply being able to deliver a good show. Subsequently, John Lord noted that he felt that this attitude meant that the spontaneity of the performances and interplay between the band members was captured well. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. When you listen to this, again, back in the day, in early 70s, you didn't have videos or music videos, so you weren't able to really capture any of this, and you had to really use your imagination when you were listening to the music, of how tight they were, of how things just kind of flowed from note to note, song to song, and you could really tell that they were enjoying playing this particular concert and just kind of let it free flow.
Excellent. On the liner notes, it does say that future Def Leppard guitarist Phil Collen was in the audience for the Rainbow gig, as captured on the sleeve.
Yeah, I think it's
Rainbow the opening act.
I don't know. There? I don't know if they even had an opening act.
Okay, interesting.
It might have just been them.
And the last thing here is Gillian and Blackmore, accordingly, allegedly, have never heard this finished album. They were not fans of getting it done. And when it came out, they're like, "Well, we already played it. Why would I sit down and listen to this? I've never heard it."
Right, exactly, which is kind of bizarre, but I guess I can understand that. If you're in that realm, you played it all live, you've been there, done it, and okay, move on to the next piece.
Now they did. What was their other band? What was their other album, Pat, that they did? Made in, and not made in Japan, but subsequently they did another one, made in another country, that they did live and marketed.
There was a live in Europe one, and I'm not sure when that came out.
Yes.
I haven't listened to any tunes off of that.
But same kind of concept. They didn't think it was going to go over well. They did it. It was fantastic. They did the same thing with the Europe. Yeah. Unbelievable. These musicians, though, very good in their own right. And now you put them together and do a show like this and release it, and
for sure,
something that
absolutely
they considered an afterthought. It's one of the top albums, live rock music concerts of all time. Is this
right? Yeah, and imagine if they would have never recorded those shows.
Yes,
we wouldn't have this.
And they were recording. People were recording because the bootleg market was so big. So they knew that
huge.
These guys had a great stage set, a great show, and now they had to set it up, record it, market it out there. Goes platinum in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, Pat. This is good stuff, because very memorable experience buying something simple, something as tangible as an album. How impactful it could be on someone's life and their music choice and their music experience, I guess, going to buy that. Your dad dropped you off. Is that right now? Your dad dropped you off. You went in and bought it.
Yeah, he actually came in with me.
He came in. Okay.
Yeah, and I went straight for this album and bought it. Probably didn't take us more than 10 minutes.
was it April of 2020, 1973 or March or April?
So this came out March of '73. So this probably would have been, I'm guessing, April, early May
A
that I
few
went
weeks
to pick
later.
this
Okay,
up.
a few
Yeah.
weeks after it came out,
Hmm.
and exciting time. I'm sure peeling off that plastic and
Oh
jumping
yeah.
into it was a huge day for you. All right. Well, thanks for your time, Pat. That's awesome stuff, and how important music is here in small little everyday lives.
Yeah. Great. Well,
How,
thanks for
how,
having me on, Dan. I appreciate it.
how impactful that stuff is.
Always fun.
All right. Thank you.